The desperate plea. The galactic parliament chamber trembled as another star system winked out of existence on the massive holographic display. Ambassador Crix felt his secondary heart skip a beat, while his primary one pounded against his chest cavity. His species, the Valari, had evolved on a paradise world where the most dangerous creature was a herbivore that occasionally stepped on smaller animals by accident. They had developed intelligence to create art and music, not to survive predation. Now faced with the approaching doom of the Void Hunters, their peaceful evolution seemed like a cosmic joke. 37 species filled the emergency assembly, each one representing civilizations that had abolished war millennia ago. The Aquari floated in their water-filled environmental suits, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent fear signals. The crystalline resonance chimed nervously, their harmonic frequencies expressing terror in mathematical precision. The plant-based Verdani rustled their leaves in distress, releasing pheromones that spoke of existential dread. Not a single species present had retained any military knowledge beyond historical archives. The Void Hunters were unlike anything in their collective experience. These beings didn't conquer or enslave. They consumed. Entire worlds were stripped bare, their biomass absorbed into the ever-growing fleet of organic ships. The Hunters learned from every encounter, adapting and evolving with terrifying speed. Conventional physics meant nothing to them. They bent space-time to their will, appearing and disappearing through dimensional rifts that left reality scarred in their wake. Parliamentary Speaker Zin activated the central platform with a gesture of her 4 arms. Her species, the Etherians, communicated through color patterns that rippled across their semi-transparent skin. Today, she displayed the deep purple of desperation mixed with orange streaks of determination. The translation matrix converted her chromatic language into audible speech for those who required it. "We have exhausted all peaceful options," she announced, her colors darkening with each word. Negotiation attempts resulted in the consumption of our diplomatic vessels. The peace offerings we sent were absorbed without acknowledgement. The Void Hunters do not recognize us as sentient beings worthy of communication. To them, we are simply resources to be harvested. A representative from the Gentle Collective, a hive mind that spanned 3 systems, projected their unified thoughts into the chamber. Our predictive models show complete galactic consumption within 18 standard months. The probability of survival without intervention approaches 0. We must consider the unthinkable option. Every being present knew what the unthinkable option meant. Deep in the restricted archives, behind quantum encryption and moral safeguards, lay information about a quarantined species, a race so violent, so inherently destructive that first contact protocols had been immediately terminated after a brief encounter 3 centuries ago. The humans of Earth had been classified as a Category Omega threat to galactic peace and cordoned off from civilized space. Ambassador Crix accessed his neural implant, pulling up the classified files. The images that appeared made his species equivalent of skin crawl. Humans came from a world designated as a Class 12 death world, the maximum rating on the habitability scale. Their planet actively tried to kill them through storms that could level cities. Tectonic activity that reshaped continents, microscopic organisms that invaded their bodies, and thousands of predator species that viewed them as prey. The humans had not only survived this nightmarish environment, but had conquered it. They had crawled to the top of their food chain through cunning, endurance, and an absolutely terrifying capacity for violence. Their history was written in blood, wars that had killed millions, weapons that could crack continents, biological agents that could wipe out entire populations. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times only to bounce back stronger and more dangerous. The first contact report was brief but chilling. Human delegates had casually discussed their military capabilities with the same tone others might use to describe agricultural yields. They kept apex predators as pets, bonding emotionally with creatures that could tear most galactic citizens apart. Their entertainment often consisted of simulated violence, and they considered activities that would kill most species to be recreational sports. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to find humor in danger, actually laughing at threats that would paralyze others with fear. The debate raged for hours. The philosophical pacifists argued that unleashing such a species would make them no better than the Void Hunters. The pragmatist countered that extinction was worse than any moral compromise. The fearful wondered if humans might be worse than the current threat, turning on their saviors once the enemy was defeated. Round and round the arguments went, while the holographic display showed another system going dark. Finally, it came to a vote. By the narrowest of margins, desperation won over caution. Ambassador Crix volunteered for the mission, knowing it might be his last act. His ship, the Harmony's Hope, was the fastest in the diplomatic fleet. If anyone could reach Earth's quarantine zone and return with help, it would be him. The journey to the Sol system took 3 weeks through hyperspace, giving Crix plenty of time to review everything they knew about humans. The more he learned, the more terrified he became. These beings had split the atom before achieving spaceflight. They had created artificial intelligences while still fighting wars over resources. Their biological science included something called gain-of-function research, deliberately making diseases more dangerous to study them. It was madness by any civilized standard. The quarantine boundary was marked with warnings in every known language. Danger, do not approach, hostile species, treaty violation. Crix's ship registered each warning as he passed, his mission authorization overriding the safety protocols. Almost immediately, primitive but effective defense satellites locked onto his vessel. A harsh voice crackled through his communication array, speaking in barely recognizable galactic standard. Unidentified vessel, you have violated the quarantine zone. State your purpose or face immediate destruction. You have 30 seconds to comply. Crix forced his voice to remain steady despite his terror. These beings opened with threats of violence. It was their default state. This is Ambassador Crix of the Galactic Parliament. I come seeking assistance. Our civilization faces extinction. There was a pause that felt like eternity. Then a different voice came through, older and more measured but somehow more dangerous for its calmness. This is Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command. Your parliament isolated us for 300 years. You called us monsters, barbarians, a threat to peaceful civilization. Why should we care about your extinction? The question was delivered without emotion. A simple request for information, but Crix could feel the Predator's assessment behind it. He transmitted the complete data package on the Void Hunters, every piece of information they had gathered. Then he waited, knowing his life hung on the response of beings who killed as easily as his people created art. 20 minutes passed before Admiral Chen responded. Your enemy is interesting. Adaptive biological warfare on a galactic scale. We'll need complete access to your technology, star charts, and resources. You'll also publicly acknowledge that your quarantine was wrong. Earth wants full membership in your parliament, trade rights, and colony permits. Non-negotiable. Crix agreed immediately. He had authorization to promise anything to secure their aid. What he didn't yet understand was that he had just invited something into their galaxy that would prove far more transformative than the Void Hunters could ever be. The unleashed storm. 3 Earth vessels emerged from hyperspace at the designated coordinates, and every sensor array in the sector immediately screamed warnings. The ships were wrong on a fundamental level, built not for exploration or trade but for a single purpose: the application of violent force. The lead vessel, designated EDS Prometheus, was 2 kilometers of angular depth, its hull bristling with weapons that defied peaceful comprehension. Missile pods, railguns, directed energy weapons, and other devices that the Parliament's scientists couldn't even identify covered every surface. Admiral Chen's shuttle docked with the Parliament station, and Crix was there to meet her. His first impression was one of controlled lethality. She moved with an economy of motion that spoke of combat training, her eyes constantly scanning the environment for threats. Behind her came a contingent of human marines in powered armor that made them look like mechanical nightmares. Each one carried weapons openly, a display that would have been considered unspeakably rude in civilized society. The Parliament Assembly watched in horrified fascination as Admiral Chen took the speaking platform without invitation or ceremony. She pulled up the Void Hunter data on the main display, studying it with the same detached interest a scientist might show examining bacteria. Her fingers danced across a tactical interface she had brought with her, running calculations and simulations at a speed that seemed impossible. Your enemy uses biological adaptation as its primary advantage, she said without preamble. It learns from each encounter, evolving counters to any resistance. You've been fighting it wrong. You keep trying to defend. Defense is death against an adaptive enemy. You have to attack continuously and unpredictably. Speaker Zin's colors shifted to confusion mixed with fear. But we eliminated violence from our societies. We have no concept of attack strategies. Chen's smile was all teeth, a predator's expression that made every alien in the room want to flee. That's why you called us. We never eliminated violence. We just got better at controlling it. Violence is a tool, and humans are very good with tools. She began outlining human military doctrine with casual efficiency. Concepts like acceptable losses, scorched earth tactics, and mutual assured destruction were explained as if discussing weather patterns. The Parliament members grew increasingly disturbed as she described weapons designed specifically to cause maximum psychological trauma, strategies that involved sacrificing entire battle groups to achieve objectives, and something called total war that involved targeting civilian populations to break enemy morale. The Aquari representative flashed colors of distress. These tactics are monstrous. How can you speak of them so calmly? Because they work, Chen replied simply. You wanted our help. This is what help looks like. War isn't noble or clean. It's organized murder on a massive scale. You either commit to it completely, or you lose. The first engagement came sooner than expected. A Void Hunter harvesting fleet materialized at the edge of the sanctuary system, home to 12 billion peaceful souls. The Parliament ships present immediately began evacuation procedures, their only trained response. The human fleet jumped directly into the system's heart, positioning themselves between the Void Hunters and the populated worlds. What followed was education and applied violence that scarred every witness. The humans didn't wait for the Void Hunters to adapt. They attacked with everything simultaneously. Nuclear weapons detonated in space, creating electromagnetic pulses that disrupted biological neural networks. Kinetic weapons accelerated to significant fractions of light speed punched through organic hulls. Chemical weapons designed to break down carbon-based molecules were deployed in massive clouds. Most disturbing of all, the humans had somehow weaponized the Void Hunter's own adaptation mechanism, introducing genetic viruses that caused their ships to evolve self-destructive traits. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Void Hunter fleet was gone, not driven off or damaged, but completely annihilated. The humans collected samples of the debris with scientific efficiency, already planning improvements to their weapons based on what they learned. They showed no celebration, no relief, just cold satisfaction at a job completed. But something else happened that the Parliament hadn't anticipated. 3 peaceful species in the sanctuary system simply vanished during the battle. Not killed or consumed, but gone as if they had never existed. When questioned, Admiral Chen seemed genuinely puzzled. Collateral damage is expected in any engagement. You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. The human idiom required explanation, and when the Parliament understood it, they were horrified. The humans considered the complete erasure of 3 civilizations to be acceptable losses in saving the system. Billions of sentient beings were reduced to a cooking metaphor. As the campaign continued, the pattern repeated. The humans were devastatingly effective against the Void Hunters. Each battle was won more quickly than the last as they refined their tactics and weapons. But with each victory, something was lost. Sometimes it was a species that disappeared. Sometimes entire worlds became uninhabitable from the weapons employed. The medicine was beginning to seem worse than the disease. The Parliament called an emergency session after the 7th engagement. 15 species had vanished entirely, either from collateral damage or from fleeing known space rather than remain near the humans. The Void Hunter threat was nearly eliminated, but at a cost no one had anticipated. Speaker Xin confronted Admiral Chen directly. What have you done? You were supposed to save us, not replace one extinction with another. Chen's expression didn't change. We did exactly what you asked. We eliminated your enemy. The fact that you couldn't handle watching how the sausage is made isn't our problem. Another human idiom that required explanation and caused more horror. The humans had dozens of casual phrases about death and violence, treated killing as something so mundane it could be compared to food preparation. The final revelation came when the last Void Hunter fleet was cornered near the galactic core. The humans deployed something they called a cascade weapon, a device that deleted matter from existence at the quantum level. The Void Hunters were erased, but so was everything else within 3 light-years. An entire stellar nursery, the birthplace of future stars and worlds, was removed from reality. In the aftermath, the Parliament discovered the truth. The humans hadn't just defeated the Void Hunters. They had absorbed their technology, learned from them just as the Void Hunters had learned from their victims. Earth's military had evolved during the conflict, becoming something even more dangerous than before. The quarantine couldn't be re-established. The humans were now part of galactic civilization, and they made it clear that any attempt to isolate them again would be considered an act of war. The peaceful species that remained had to accept a new reality. The galaxy was no longer a safe place. The predators had been invited in, and they were here to stay. Ambassador Crick stood in his office, looking at the star charts that now showed human colonies spreading through former Parliament space. They had saved them from the Void Hunters, but at the cost of everything they had built. The humans didn't conquer or enslave. They simply existed, and their existence changed everything around them. Violence had returned to the galaxy, not as an aberration but as a permanent feature. The irony wasn't lost on him. They had summoned humanity to save their civilization, and humanity had done exactly that. They had saved it by destroying everything it had been and replacing it with something harder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous. The peaceful age was over. The age of predators had begun. In the end, the Parliament's greatest fear had come true. They hadn't been destroyed by the Void Hunters. They had been transformed by their saviors into something they no longer recognized. The humans called it evolution. The surviving peaceful species had another word for it: extinction.